I think that when you go to start something, this would be my career advice to somebody too, get your head out of the corporate MBA approved approach. Find something you love, and the next thing you're going to think is, I don't know if that's a big enough market.
Right.
If you're an artist or a practitioner in a particular craft, your customers and your employees will feel that. And that makes up for any deficiency somebody has in starting a business.
Welcome to Beyond the Ledger, real conversations with people driving business forward. I'm Troy Ashby, CPA and host. Each episode, we unpack stories, challenges, and insights from today's top accounting and finance leaders. This podcast is brought to you by my friends over at MarketScale. Welcome back to Beyond the Ledger. Today's guest is Ben Maitland, CEO and founder of MarketScale. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, Troy. Glad to be here and glad for you to be up here at MarketScale. So
absolutely.
Here we go.
Well, I guess before we get started, I'm just curious. We talked to a lot of financial leaders, but also business owners.
Yeah. And,
founders have a unique perspective. I would love to just kind of start with that and kind of what that means to you.
Well, I do like the word founder. A lot of people say CEO, and I like to hold on to that founder title because I think there's a lot that comes with that. What's fun about founder is you are a finance professional, but you're also the janitor. So you cover a lot of ground. You're doing everything from sales to product to finance to accounting. So, in the early days, you just don't have a lot of infrastructure. I remember years ago, I think probably 5 years ago now, calling you when we needed some financial infrastructure. But, you are wearing a lot of hats in the early days, and it means, that means a lot.
So let's talk about those early days. Did you find that you were the bottleneck because you were wearing all those hats? You have to do it all, or at least you feel like you have to do it all.
So we've been on this podcast a minute, and we've already found that I'm the bottleneck. So
it's not uncommon. So am I. Right?
I think at times you can be. You got to wear a lot of hats. Although later in the business, I think with AI and a lot of things, you can actually cover more ground in recent years than you used to be able to.
Yeah.
You have access to tools and information, and you can scale what you're doing. So I think years ago, we've been in business 10 years now. You could find yourself as the bottleneck when it came to a particular discipline. Less so now, but I'll take it. I could say there were times where we needed to scale and we needed help. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I guess let's back up though. I'm curious. Not everybody can be a founder. Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. Did you always have that itch? Or did it just happen to you?
I think I always had the interest in starting something.
Okay.
It's funny. I played a lot of baseball growing up, but I found myself also doing a lot of entrepreneurial things. I had a business selling sand dollars.
Okay.
I had a business. Obviously, everybody had a lawn business. Did you ever have a lawn business?
I did. Okay. That was my first job. Now it's hard to get that as a teenager.
Yep. And then I used to do quite a bit of work around marinas with ropes and splices and different things that a lot of different sailors would need around the marinas when I used to spend a lot of time on the water. So I found early on that if I could kind of be entrepreneurial, I could not really just control income because, you want to make money, but find that passion. And I wanted to build that into my career. And so when I got the chance to be entrepreneurial, I took it. And I do think it was kind of a natural inevitability. It wasn't a leap. A lot of people say take the leap. It felt natural for what I was probably meant to do, and I'm probably better in an entrepreneurial setting than I am in a typical company. So I think that was a wise thing to finally figure out. But it felt natural.
And do you think that do you wish you would have done it sooner? It's one of those things that you hear some founders say, no, it's perfect timing, and others like, why didn't I do that 10 years ago?
It's funny. You see folks that are like, out in California and San Francisco. I think there was an article in the Wall Street Journal saying there's a new gold rush, and you've got 20-year-old founders, skipping college and out there building AI companies. And I have a little bit of FOMO there. It's like, maybe 20 years ago, I could have been doing something very, very entrepreneurial, and like in that regard,
right.
I probably, maybe even skipping college. Right?
Massive opportunities today.
Yeah, I think skipping college and being entrepreneurial might actually be the best path for a lot of people, and so I do think of that sometimes. But I was doing entrepreneurial business in my first company, and enjoying that growth piece there, and so it. I think MarketScale happened at about the right time.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about what was the vision behind MarketScale? What kind of drove? Was it a need that you saw? What kind of struck you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's helped kind of shape what I believe about entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And that is, I think my very first instinct was, based on my history in being entrepreneurial, was start a company.
Mm-hmm.
I think I wanted to sort of A, start company, B, find something that I knew how to build.
Fair. Yeah.
And so, I knew a little bit about marketing, and I knew that I wanted to be on the content side of marketing, content marketing, inbound marketing, eventually video marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I knew. So you kind of got to build what you know. But my initial passion was start a business.
Right.
And, you go through different iterations when you start a business like that. You can do things backwards. And that can mean that you first, maybe you find your office before you need to.
Fair.
Maybe you hire 20 people before you need to. Maybe you have a 401k matching program for your employees before you have the product that you need.
Right.
Because I wanted to start a business. I wanted it to be a business, and I was going to will this place to being a real business as fast as I could.
Yeah.
As time went on, your customers tell you what you need to be. And the market tells you what you need to be. And I think as time went on, MarketScale made me move back almost to that garage band phase. And even 10 years later, I think we're more in the garage band era than even halfway through this journey. And so how did we get here? I wanted to start a company. I knew the genre that I wanted to play in. But it wasn't really until we got going that I said, wow, we need to become grassroots. We need to go back to square one. We need to have that first principle thinking. Within that, we found our journey around user-generated content, authentic content, and probably just the opposite of anything that folks normally think about in marketing, which is you think of marketing as polish and control, and we try to think of MarketScale as authenticity and more unscripted. So it found us maybe.
So you guys actually introduced me to UGC. I knew what it was and I was watching it. I didn't know I was watching it. Even some Super Bowl commercials or some of the big commercials now.
Even years ago,
Yeah. I guess, so talk to me about the evolution into that and why did you think that was your niche? Is it the TikTok era? Like, what's the idea?
Yeah, like I said, as we sort of started, check the box, have a company, have a marketing company.
Right.
And then sort of our thesis sort of found us. Really on two dimensions. One, the consumer world, okay? You think about influencers.
Right.
You think about the way people find their consumer products, home goods, travel, hospitality, different things that they buy. Instagram and the influencer community really became a clear movement.
Right.
And what I tell people is that in B2B, it lags B2C by about 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're here in Dallas and most of the time, if you want to see if it's going to rain, you look on the radar, and if it's raining west of here and it's headed this way, it's going to rain in 30 minutes, right? Well, in B2B, you have that 5-year lag of what's cool in B2C coming on over to B2B. So we saw that, and we said, look, let's skate to where the puck is going. So UGC, the idea of influencers, sort of breaking that sort of corporate veneer and getting to the voice of the people, that was the idea. On the other side, scaling an agency is extraordinarily difficult. You build it on production fees and certainly incredible creativity. But it requires maybe even a type of skill set that I didn't have. I wanted to operationalize a business, something we could scale. And UGC is magical because you're not trying to replicate the voice of your customer. You are amplifying the voice of your customer.
Yeah.
And once we realized that we could be a platform for UGC, a platform for the voice of the customer, then that made it natural to build that platform virtually and physically here in Dallas to actually build that platform for the customer. So again, another instance of kind of, skating to where the market was going, but also just sort of the business telling us where it needed to go, the customer telling us where it needed to go, and following that lead in a way.
So as a founder, was that it made immediate sense, or was it kind of stubborn, like absolutely not? You kind of had that first, I want to start a business, I'm going to do this. As they started talking to you, were you kind of ignoring them initially? Talk to me about that. Founders all have very strong opinions for a reason, but I'm just curious how that evolution happened.
Yeah. So it's funny when you think about the evolution. Obviously, we had to pay the bills. Mm-hmm. So we were completely bootstrapped, self-funded, no institutional financial partner. And so in the earliest of days, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, we were selling whatever we could within the context of some of our earlier business models, which was a little bit agency-oriented, production-oriented, and a little bit transactional. Mm-hmm. As you kind of go along, you do face some of that tension that you're referring to. Mm-hmm. What I would tell a founder is that as you start to crystallize your thesis, look, founders deserve a little bit of credit every once in a while. You're probably going to realize it first.
Yeah.
Okay. But And your customers are going to realize that they're with you. You are going to have to fight all of the process that you already built. You have to reject business models that you had already constructed.
Right. You
may have hired people on the context of a particular business vision that then pivots.
Yeah.
And so, as you evolve, you will fight your own business.
Yeah.
And that's, we're very committed to disrupting ourselves before the market disrupts us.
Yeah.
In the Clayton Christensen theory of disruption. So we're very cognizant of having to do that. But I feel like I've been fighting my own business for the better part of 8 or 9 years as we evolve.
Right. So you've got to, redefine the vision.
Yep.
Now you've got to motivate the team around the new
That's
vision.
Right.
And now you have to say no to business that you could make money on to fulfill the vision. Right?
You have to say no to business that is commoditized, that might be easy money. You have to reframe with your own internal culture what you are. Mm. You have to constantly redirect and rebuild and redesign everything that you've built to try to continue that evolution. So I'm really passionate about this particular part of growing a business because I've lived this case study, and it's an exercise in just saying, evolution. There's a reason companies get disrupted, and it's because when you try to evolve, you have to prioritize your incumbents.
Yeah.
And you're prioritizing your incumbent employees and you're prioritizing your incumbent customers.
Yep.
And so you can feel when you're evolving and growing, everybody thinks, hey, we evolved to this, we pivoted to this. What nobody realizes is how hard that can be when it comes to feeling like you're rejecting what got you here.
Right. It's the blockbuster effect.
And you have to take care of those customers, be loyal to those earliest customers, sustain that momentum because we're so grateful for them.
Right.
All the while hope that they see the vision that we see. And we're really lucky that most have. And so over the years, we've built a vision and a direction that has really taken off.
So we've known each other for like 5 years,
Yep.
4 or 5 years at this point. And you were telling me 5 years ago what this was. And then even a year ago, I get fired up because I've so many of the companies I see around have been with MarketScale or I'll be in studio and an old boss of mine from EY, I happened to see a set that I was like, they're at MarketScale.
That's happening a lot. People will say, I know that wall
set.
or whatever.
Yeah. But I guess tell people kind of how that works. We briefly touched on UGC and the scalability of it. But what does this new, whatever it is, 3.0, 4.0, 10.0 MarketScale actually do?
Companies today are really dealing with a generational transformation that's happening in the world. And that is, if you think of kind of like when we were growing up all the way until the post-COVID, right? Or even maybe there was a little gap in between as the transitions happened. We really went from this era where if you think like 90s corporate, every business was really centralized.
Mm-hmm.
Every business was really scripted. Okay? And so you had this era of really traditional, and maybe that was how businesses just were.
Right.
You think about how artists were discovered, musicians were discovered, movies were discovered. You had a traditional pipeline, through the record label or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then along comes YouTube. Along comes Spotify. And discovery really changes the way businesses are wired. And so today's best businesses are decentralized and largely unscripted in what they're doing. And the value that today's businesses create is oftentimes not centralized within the confines of their walls, but decentralized out to the edge.
Yeah.
You see this with entertainers. We talk a lot about the NFL or the Dallas Cowboys or Taylor Swift or one of our favorites, the Savannah Bananas.
Oh, yeah.
And Savannah Bananas, named their company Fans First.
Yeah.
Because they realize that when you turn your customers into fans, they do the marketing for you.
Right.
So today's MarketScale is building on these trends of decentralization, unscripted, authentic, more raw business models that put the onus on the edge and helping companies really leverage who are their experts at the edge. It can be colleagues, it can be channel partners, and it can be customers. We call it the 3 C's. But your best marketers are not in marketing, right? The marketing department may be one of the strongest departments in your company, but they are leaders. They are conductors. Great marketing is to get those ideas from the subject matter experts.
Yep.
So we help companies do that. MarketScale Studio is a platform that helps you go out and podcast and create content and get videos from your engineers, your channel partners, your dealers, your distributors, your customers. And even customer content, it's not a testimonial. It's shining a light on the good things that they're doing. It's talking practical business cases and shared industry vision and direction. And so MarketScale's Every Waking Moment is helping about 400 companies at this point chase down a stronger, more authentic crowd approach to marketing.
So you hit on something, the marketing folks, and you've basically created a way to have every person be your own marketer, right?
That's right.
I see that I tell companies all the time, the best recruiters are your employees and who they know.
Yeah.
It's the same concept, but you've taken this at massive scale. And you're not just here, right? I mean, because it's so desegregated, talk about how, we're here, Dallas, but how does this work beyond, the DFW walls?
Yeah, this is maybe this is our Disney World, right? I mean, this is our HQ, our experience center. And so being here, you have your studios, you have your sets and different things that we do here. But, the vast majority of MarketScale is worldwide. We help people create content on really two fronts. One, if you were calling an Uber out there today, you could go down to street level, call an Uber, and a car's going to show up. At MarketScale, you could do the same thing, but book a videographer in London for Monday. You could book a videographer in Tokyo for Monday. Might be tough, but very soon. And so that's one, is this idea of booking productions to get the content you need on demand on our platform anytime. And then the other way that we sort of get global is just our user-generated content platform, MarketScale Studio, which would be very familiar to anybody who's used YouTube or any social media. But it's the idea that everybody's a creator. And so if you have a company of 500 people, they all have something to share.
Right.
And so you onboard them, you add them, they get unlimited access, they get unlimited video edits. We have hundreds of video editors that take this content and turn it into something. So the marketer, that conductor, now has the ability to, retrieve and sort of achieve content from their whole community, their whole crowd.
All right. So, I'm sitting here, I'm taking all this in. There's a lot to unpack because, what's the difference? Again, you mentioned it, but as a layman, difference between that and an agency. But we can get to that in a second. You've got a lot of moving parts, and you're still the founder. Roadblocks along the way, things that this is a pretty disrupting venture on purpose, right?
Yeah.
So walk through some of those hurdles.
There's no hurdles. It's just smooth.
Yeah, like all things are.
Yeah, no hurdles here. I think, again, it's our challenges are simple. They're just Groundhog Day. You do wake up in the morning growing a business saying, all right, I'm going to go do the exact same thing again. And that is try to scale, try to grow. And so, no, I think, hurdles are always staffing, hiring. I mean, the business you're in, you chose the right field. I mean, the people business is how do you find people to be passionate about your goals?
Right.
And I guess I will ask you that, if I might. Because maybe I can get some advice here. Founder to founder, is it something you see a lot when a founder's trying to build a culture, build a company, that they have to be able to match that intensity and rally around the company vision, so then staffing and hiring becomes a challenge?
So if you're asking about attraction,
yeah.
Right? It is about being able to share your vision and how they're a part of it. If you are literally trying to pluck a competitor, or it doesn't really matter. I think what happens is people are hiring for a person and a skill set, and they miss 50% of it. And is how can they be a part of it and grow with it? And it's the same thing on the retention side. Look, people are inherently selfish, right? Maybe not selfish is the right word. They are in it for what's in it for me. So you need to put you in it for them at every single time. And, if they continue to feel that they are part of that vision and see a growth path, they're more likely to come. If it's just a job, then maybe it's not. But you're right. Staffing is hard. Finding people is hard. Retaining them is hard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're in the right field.
Yeah. Well, I stumbled into it. So somehow it's become a passion of mine. It's funny. I don't know if you follow much about Gary Vee ever, but he's been talking about video for a long time.
Yeah.
And video to LinkedIn, like it seemed like that would never take off, and now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So you found a spot.
Yeah, video. Part of me says, video is a commodity, right? It's like people used to say the year of video, or
Sure.
I don't even really like thinking of MarketScale as a video company, because some of the best subject matter expertise can come across any format.
Sure.
Audio, written content and whatnot. But Gary Vee and a lot of the greats, they go out there and they talk about the power of short form. And so their evangelism on short form media and what that's done for B2B, it has really paved the way for companies like us.
Yeah. Is that because our attention spans are so like minuscule, right? I mean, people click on and click off all the time.
Yeah.
And I guess not to get into nuance, because that's a small piece of everything that you do, but it certainly has it's got to spur some interest in kind of the product that you guys do with UGC though.
Yeah, I think we have shorter attention spans, but I also think we're entering an era where work and life don't have to be so divided. Folks have their Instagram and their TikTok, and they get their travel tips and their fashion tips in short form. It is not a big leap to say, let's get our accounting platform tips in short form.
Right.
So I don't know if it's an attention span, or if just, humans are just optimizing for what humans enjoy. I mean,
Sure.
we like consumable content. We like a good dopamine hit when we open up a feed. And so really giving businesses that permission to say, have a little fun with your content, break away some of that corporate theater. We have a saying here, end corporate theater. That idea that, you can have a little fun, you can be genuine and authentic when you talk about something in the B2B world. That is a revelation that I think a lot of people are having right now.
We were talking about this a little bit off air, or probably recorded, but people get on camera and all of a sudden they put on a face.
Yep.
And so you're basically saying, don't do that. People are going to trust you or the person on the other side if you can just have a conversation.
Yeah, and I think, when's the last time, you saw an ad that wasn't trying to be authentic? You see ads now that somebody's recording a selfie. Yeah. And like SoFi had a series of commercials where it was all done on iPhone.
Right.
And
was that the single form one that they did? Is that
they've had a ton, actually. And I think commercials today know that the consumer, the buyer, is looking for authenticity. And so, I think driving towards real, organic, authentic content, and even removing that polish. I heard someone say the term the other day, ugly content.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I heard it for the first time, and it was the idea of ugly UGC is actually a strategy. The idea that there's a spelling mistake. The idea that the edit's a little off. There's something that consumers are going to say, this is real.
It's funny.
And that's, I think that's the thing that's important today.
So it's so much AI that goes on. And, in my world, there is a bunch, everybody gets it. You're getting spammed via email with every single, it could be 3 times a day, 5 times an hour, whatever it is. But that misspelling thing, oh, that was probably actually a real person.
Yeah.
It takes the AI or the busyness out of things.
So if you want to write something to somebody and you wrote it with ChatGPT, just misspell a few things,
Correct.
Go back and edit
That's
a few
it.
things, have a couple of misspellings up at the top, and they'll think you wrote
a
it.
weird punctuation, something.
Yeah. No M dash.
Yeah. Okay. Ugly content. Is that going to be your new slogan?
I don't know. If people would buy it, I'll sell it.
Yeah.
But I think the lesson there, though, is that genuine, authentic content is what works.
Yeah.
And, we help these industries where they are just burdened by seeing marketing and promotions as scripted. to the extent that they don't produce. They can't get a podcast out. They can't get material out. And a lot of people will say, I'm in a tightly regulated industry, or here's how we've always done things, or you don't understand what my company's all about, or, But the thing we have to remember is you're not competing with your corporate structure. You're not always even competing with your industry. Sometimes the innovation is coming from outside your industry, overseas. Entirely different category can disrupt what you're doing. And so sometimes, even though we try to control our marketing and traditional approaches are popular, sometimes we don't have a choice but to say, look, we've got to build a crowd. We've got to decentralize. We've got to go unscripted, because if we don't, somebody else will.
Yeah. So let's project in the future. Be a fortune teller for me. Where are you guys going? What is your vision?
MarketScale's vision is very much built on the individual, and by that I mean, what does it look like in a world where people like their job? What does it look like in a world where people take personal responsibility for, lifelong learning, long past college, and way beyond what the certifications require them to do? I know you're in the finance world. There's a lot of boxes to check.
Oh yeah, and it stifled us a little bit.
Yep. But what does it look like when learning incentivizes evangelism, growth, entrepreneurship, and career development? And so I think if you think about UGC, user-generated content, there's a U in there. And it's really saying that the engineer, the teacher, the nurse has something to say to grow their career and their company. And MarketScale isn't going to stop until everybody has a chance to create UGC and to grow their companies very naturally and organically, but all the while enjoying the personal upside that they have with that. This is a meritocracy thing. People who create, people who invent, we want to help them grow, because when they grow, their companies grow, and it's good for our customers. So our future will probably intersect with education, online learning, career development, because you don't have to go very far from a podcast to seeing it as a course.
Right. Yeah.
Or a demonstration of knowledge. And I can't tell you how many people join our clients and enjoy the fact that it might be investor interest, it might be career progress, promotions, all from sharing what they know and seeking to understand more about their industry. And so we want to create that environment for that level of personal upward mobility on the knowledge economy of ideas and subject matter expertise, so that everybody wakes up in the morning and says, I may be an employee, I may be an engineer at this company, but I am the CEO of my own career.
Right. I hadn't thought about, because these companies are usually they're the ones hiring you. But you're right. The individual gets just as much, if not more, from a authority standpoint and awareness, and that's I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, so that's really where the energy will flow eventually.
Right.
So it's the passionate individual professional that not that just benefits, because their companies benefit.
They do.
But having smart people, you look at what Steve Jobs did. When he launched all of his products, going back to the Macintosh, what he did so well, especially post iPhone, was inviting his engineers on stage. A lot of companies, they bring the founder, the CEO, or the PR team, or the marketing team. He would say, hey, here's my UI UX designer.
Right.
Here's my, industrial designer, sometimes even his agency partners, right? And he was really doing the first form of company-centric UGC, which is saying, you're the best marketer in this company because you designed the iPhone, Johnny Ive.
Right.
And he made a rock star out of Johnny Ive, a designer.
Yeah.
How many designer rock stars were there in the 60s and the 70s? I know there are a few famous ones, but that idea was really born out of saying the best marketer for the iPhone is Johnny Ive.
Yeah, that's smart. Well, Ben, before I let you go, this has been great. You've shared tons of information, but I am curious. There's going to be either founders earlier stage or somebody thinking about being a founder. Mm-hmm. What advice would you share with them?
Well, it's a big question. Don't do it. No. Don't do it. Go work somewhere. I say that as a bit of a joke, but it's actually true. That is rule number one. You got to really want to start a business. And I'm sure you know this.
Oh, yeah. You got guts.
You've got to want to because it never sleeps.
Right.
People think there's a work-life balance associated with starting a company. Someday I'm going to work for myself. Working for yourself just means you now have 100 bosses, and that's your customers.
Fair.
All right. So the first point is make sure you really, really, really want to do it and that you have a good support team around you. My wife was very supportive of this, and that is rule number one. Okay. Want it and make sure everybody else wants you to do it as well. But I will tell you there is a nuance here that I think is really important. And that is you've got to start a business in something you're passionate about. I've got an MBA. And when I got that MBA from University of Texas, like everybody else graduating that day, I was really proud of it. Made great contacts in networking and did a lot of learning and especially contemplation during the MBA. But there are some sort of switches that can get turned off when you're business first. Mm-hmm. The master of business administration. And when you travel around and you see companies, usually great surfing companies were started by great surfers.
Sure.
I ski a little bit. And so a lot of times the ski shops, you look at these ski shops that have, people pouring their money into rentals and purchases. They're bought and run by skiers, mm-hmm. ski instructors. And so I think that when you go to start something, this would be my career advice to somebody too, get your head out of the corporate MBA approved approach. Find something you love, and the next thing you're going to think is, I don't know if that's a big enough market.
Right.
If you're an artist or a practitioner in a particular craft, your customers and your employees will feel that. And that makes up for any deficiency somebody has in starting a business. The next thing is people say, well, I can't start a business because I don't have a great idea. I'm just waiting for that idea. And boring businesses make a lot of money too. It's rarely about the idea. It's always about the execution. And so sitting around saying, I have to wait for the perfect idea usually isn't right either. Get started, start small, start where you're passionate, and you will grow a better business in that way than you will sizing up the market, total addressable market, and the spreadsheets that you might otherwise feel like doing. That
is absolutely brilliant, and I think it's a great way to end. I've appreciated everything that you've shared, and thanks for letting us come in the studio.
Well, thanks for coming out here, and Troy, it has been fun to watch what you're doing.
I appreciate you, Ben.
Excited to keep working with you.
Absolutely. I'm Troy Ashby, and remember, people are more than their titles, and companies are more than their balance sheets. Follow Beyond the Ledger so you never miss an episode.